I think the markets have been relieved by this, news from Trump. And I guess, the way markets have been worried about the Hormuz Straits blockade, uh, that has more or less waned at this point in time. And clearly, you can see the way the indices are reacting to the news. Basically, 20% of oil, flows through Hormuz Straits. So, a threat of, I wouldn't say closure because, Iran can't afford to close Hormuz Strait, but they can definitely create issues for shipping and supplies from there. So that in turn is going to escalate to higher freight costs, higher inflation, higher interest rates, and so on. So it's a huge relief what we're seeing today. But the nature of this announcement is that it needs to come from Iran as well. So that we haven't seen concretely. And that is something which I would be very, very closely watching because uh, you know uh, that's the uncertainty at this point in time. But coming off from the peaks, I think it has brought in some much needed relief, both for consumers as well as producers.
Now, we were watching very closely at this time yesterday what the response would be from Iran following the U.S. strikes on its nuclear sites. Iran, in a very measured reaction, using the exact same number of missiles that bunker busters that the U.S. did on its nuclear sites. And it did not close off Hormuz as many had been anticipating. In terms of potential next moves coming through from Iran, what are some of those moves, and what are you telegraphing?
Well, I think, knowing well, they've been in a war for a while with Israel, depletion of their, missile capabilities. They would prefer to, I think they would prefer to sort of go with the ceasefire and then regroup themselves. But having said that, a country with which has been in sanctions for so many years, I don't think they would get into a full-blown conflict with the U.S. Even continue with Israel for some time. So my sense is, this is not going to sustain and last for some time, but there will be political posturing. There will be blockade threats to Hormuz because, that's one thing I think Iran thinks has in its weaponry more than the weapons itself. So that I think is one of the biggest threats which is still alive, where they could potentially cause quite a bit of problem for supplies from Middle East. But keep in mind that Iran's supplies itself will be affected. So there will also be a sort of limit to what they will do to as far as the blockade is concerned.
Now, we know that India is highly dependent on oil imports. 90% of its oil is imported, in fact. And we've heard from the government, the oil minister or the gas minister, Hardeep Singh Puri. We got a chance to hear from him. If we can both listen in, and then we'll talk on the back of it, please.
We had diversified the sources of supply. And out of the 5.5 million barrels of crude oil that India consumes daily, about 1.5 and 2 million only come through the Straits of Hormuz. We import roughly 4 million barrels through other routes, and our companies, the oil marketing companies, have enough stocks. Most of them have stocks up to 3 weeks. One of them has, in fact, 25 days stocks. And we are also confident that we can increase the supply of crude through other routes, should the situation so warrant.
The gas minister was speaking there on a Sunday about the diversification of their oil import routes. As we talk about India, share with us how exposed India is to oil prices, to the conflict. Now that they're diversified, their exposure, of course, also increasing over in Russia.
Absolutely. I think the detachment is very clear from any conflict that arises in the Middle East. In fact, India has been building reserves to some extent, I must say, and that was also helping. But if you look at specifically the escalation in the Middle East and what it can do to India, honestly is not much because it's roughly around 2 million barrels and it can be easily supported from other sources, like the minister very clearly said. India buys quite a bit from West Africa, even the US, and certain Latin American countries as well. But these could be a little costlier due to higher freight and stuff like that. But as we all know, this is a temporary situation. It's not something which will sustain and last. So I guess the impact on India as far as this particular situation in the Middle East is going to have a very, very minimal impact. And I completely agree with the minister on this.